I sat in my home office, reviewing the merger proposal between TechVision Industries and Global Dynamics while my daughter-in-law's voice drifted up from the garden party below. Of that little consulting thing. Andrea's laugh tinkled like expensive crystal. It's just something to keep her busy. You know how these empty nesters get. Trust me, for your corporate needs, you want someone more substantial. Through my window, I could see her holding court among Manhattan's elite, hosting another of her networking brunches at my son Michael's house. The same house I'd helped him buy with my little consulting thing money. My phone buzzed, the FTC chairman calling for the third time today. Patricia, he sounded stressed. Have you reviewed the TechVision merger docs? Just finishing now, I replied, watching Andrea gesture dismissively toward my office while chatting with TechVision's VP of Operations. It's interesting. That's one word for it. The preliminary review team found some concerning patterns. We need your final recommendation by Monday. I made a note in the margins of page 394, where TechVision's creative accounting couldn't quite hide their market manipulation strategy. I'll have my complete analysis ready for the board meeting. Thank you, and Patricia. The White House is watching this one closely. Of course they were. The TechVision Global Dynamics merger would create the largest tech conglomerate in history. If approved, it would make Andrea, their head of strategic partnerships, one of the most powerful executives in the industry. And if denied, well, my daughter-in-law might finally learn why serious players in corporate America take my little consulting business very seriously indeed. Mom, Michael knocked on my office door. Are you joining us for brunch? Just finishing some work, honey. I closed the merger file as he entered. My brilliant, kind-hearted son, who'd somehow married a woman who measured everyone's worth either social media following and country club memberships. Andrea's telling everyone about the merger, he said proudly. It's going to be huge for her career. So I've heard. Through my window, I watched Andrea air-kiss the wife of Global Dynamics CEO. Has she mentioned any concerns about regulatory approval? Michael shrugged. She says it's just a formality. Apparently, they've got some top-tier consulting firm handling all that boring government stuff. I thought of the 3 minor violations I'd already flagged in the morning's review. Interesting approach. You should come down, he urged. Andrea's boss is here. Maybe you could network a bit, drum up some business for your consulting. Before I could respond, Andrea's voice carried up again. Oh, my mother-in-law. She means well, but her business is more boutique. Charming really, but not quite up to handling significant corporate matters. Michael winced. She's just being herself. I finished. Don't worry about it. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my colleague at the Justice Department. Antitrust implications worse than expected. Need your insights before we proceed. Mom. Michael was watching me carefully. Why are you smiling like that? Just thinking about Monday's meeting. The merger review board thing. Andrea mentioned that was happening. She's not worried though. Says they got all the right people in their corner. I thought of the right people Andrea had cultivated. The social media influencers, the society columnists, the cocktail party power brokers. None of whom had any actual say in whether her merger lived or died. Michael, I said carefully, has Andrea ever actually asked what kind of consulting I do? She assumes it's like career coaching or something. He looked uncertain. You've never really talked about it. No, I agreed. I haven't. Below, Andrea was holding forth about the merger's brilliance. It's really about market synergy, she explained to her rapt audience. Once those tedious regulatory hurdles are cleared. My phone buzzed again. The White House Chief of Staff this time. I sent it to voicemail. Honey, I told Michael, why did you go enjoy the party? I need to finish this review. At least come down for a minute. Andrea's boss really knows his stuff about business. Maybe you could learn something useful. I glanced at the post-it note on my monitor, reminding me of Monday's schedule. 9:00 a.m., final merger review. 10:00 a.m., board vote. 11:00 a.m., White House briefing. 12:00 p.m., press conference. I'm sure I could, I said mildly. After Michael left, I returned to page 394, where TechVision's clever accountants had almost managed to hide the market manipulation strategy. Almost, but not quite. Not from someone who'd spent 30 years building one of the most respected independent consulting firms in regulatory compliance. My phone buzzed yet again. The SEC this time. Through the window, I heard Andrea telling someone, my mother-in-law. Oh, she does some sort of small business consulting. Very basic stuff, nothing like what we deal with. I opened my laptop and began typing. Preliminary FINDINGSRE. TKCV and global DYNAMMICS MERG. PAR. Attention. Federal Trade Commission Board. From Patricia Chen, Chairperson, Merger Review Board. Basic stuff indeed, I murmured, listing the first of several critical violations that Andrea's top-tier consulting firm had somehow missed. The garden party continued below, Manhattan's elite hanging on Andrea's every word about the merger that would make her career. None of them knowing that up in my quaint home office, I was composing the document that would determine whether that merger lived or died. My phone buzzed one final time, a text from my senior partner. Pat, should we tell her? I watched Andrea dismiss another question about my business with a wave of her champagne glass. Not yet. I texted back. Monday will be soon enough. Sometimes the best lessons come from discovering just how wrong our assumptions can be, and sometimes the smallest offices contain the biggest surprises. I returned to my review, smiling slightly as Andrea's voice drifted up once more. Oh, that little home office, it's just her hobby really, nothing serious. Serious enough to determine the fate of your $4.8 billion merger, dear daughter-in-law. Serious enough indeed. My phone buzzed with another message from the FTC chairman. Final decision Monday? Yes, I replied, watching Andrea hold court below. I think Monday will be very educational for everyone involved. Sunday evening, the night before the merger review, Andrea hosted a small dinner for 20 of her closest corporate allies. From my office, I could hear them discussing tomorrow's formality over $500 bottles of wine. The regulatory review is just a rubber stamp, Andrea assured her guests. Our consultants have guaranteed it. I added another note to my analysis. Consultants' failure to identify critical market concentration issues in Section 7A. My phone lit up with a text from the SEC commissioner. Saw your preliminary findings. This is bigger than we thought. Below, Andrea's voice carried up. Once this merger goes through, we'll control 67% of the market. Total digital dominance. I highlighted that percentage in my report. The Sherman Antitrust Act had something to say about that level of market concentration, something Andrea's expensive consultants had apparently forgotten. Mom? Michael appeared in my doorway. Andrea's boss wants to meet you. Says he's curious about your little business. I closed my laptop. That should be interesting. Downstairs, CEO Richard Hammond held court in my living room, Andrea hovering nervously nearby. Ah, the mysterious mother-in-law. Andrea tells me you do some sort of small business consulting. Something like that, I smiled, accepting a glass of their overpriced wine. You should see her home office, Andrea jumped in. It's adorable, like a little corporate playhouse. Where I review some interesting documents, I added mildly, mergers and acquisitions, regulatory compliance, that sort of thing. Hammond's smile flickered slightly. Regulatory compliance, that must be fascinating. Oh, it is. For instance, I just reviewed a fascinating merger proposal. The companies involved somehow missed several Section 7 violations. Amateur mistakes, really, the kind my little business would have caught immediately. Andrea laughed nervously. Mother, I'm sure Mr. Hammond doesn't want to discuss boring regulatory details. Actually, Hammond set down his wine. Perhaps we should. Andrea, someone called from the dining room. Tell everyone about tomorrow's merger announcement. She rushed off, leaving me with an increasingly uncomfortable CEO. Mrs. Chen, Hammond said quietly, exactly what kind of consulting do you do? The kind that usually prevents companies from making fatal mistakes in their merger proposals, I replied. But I'm sure your top-tier consultants have everything under control. His face paled slightly. Perhaps we should discuss this in private. Tomorrow, I smiled. At the review board meeting. Review board, his eyes widened with sudden recognition. You're not, you can't be. Patricia Chen, I extended my hand. Chairperson of the FTC Merger Review Board. But please don't let me interrupt the celebration. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Mrs. Chen, if there are any issues with our proposal. Then they should have been caught by your consultants, I finished. The ones my daughter-in-law assured you were far more qualified than my little business. The color drained from his face. We can refile, amend the proposal. Tomorrow is the final review, I reminded him. But I'm sure it's just a formality, right? That's what Andrea's been telling everyone. Back in my office, I finished my analysis while the party continued below. My phone buzzed with a message from my senior partner. White House is very interested in your findings on market manipulation. Andrea's voice drifted up. By this time tomorrow, we'll be the biggest tech company in history. I added my final recommendation to the report just as Michael appeared again. Mom, why does Andrea's boss look like he's seen a ghost? Perhaps he's nervous about tomorrow's merger review. But Andrea said it's just a formality. Did she? I saved my report. How interesting. The party wound down around midnight. As the guests departed, I heard Hammond telling Andrea, "We need to talk. First thing tomorrow. Before the review board meeting." But it's just a rubber stamp. Her voice trailed off as he whispered something urgent in her ear. I was preparing for bed when Andrea knocked on my door, her perfect composure slightly cracked. "Mother," her voice wavered, "Mr. Hammond said something very strange about you and tomorrow's review board." "Did he?" "He said, but it can't be true. He said you're the chairperson." "Of the FTC merger review board?" "Yes." She sank onto my bed, her designer dress crumpling. But your little consulting business is one of the most respected regulatory compliance firms in Washington. I finished. The boring government stuff you didn't think was worth discussing. The merger, she whispered. All our work will be evaluated fairly, I assured her, based solely on its legal merits. Though I must say your consultants missed some rather serious issues. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked, I said simply. You were too busy explaining to everyone how small-time and unimportant my work was. She stared at me, years of dismissive comments and condescending introductions playing across her face. Is there time to fix it? The review is at 9 a.m. I checked my watch. Though I'm sure your top-tier consultants have everything under control. She fled to her room, phone already pressed to her ear, presumably calling those same consultants who had guaranteed regulatory approval. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones we learn about our own assumptions, and sometimes the smallest businesses cast the longest shadows in the corridors of power. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. Tomorrow would be an educational day for everyone involved, especially my daughter-in-law. Monday morning, 8:45 a.m., the FTC boardroom filled with executives, lawyers, and the press. Andrea sat with her team, her usual confident smile replaced by a look of barely concealed panic. Behind her, Hammond kept checking his phone, likely waiting for last-minute advice from their consultants. At precisely 9 a.m., I entered through the chairman's door, taking my seat at the head of the review board. The room fell silent as recognition dawned on various faces. That's your mother-in-law, someone whispered to Andrea, the small-time consultant. Another added, not quite quietly enough. I opened the merger proposal, noting how Andrea seemed to shrink in her designer's suit. Shall we begin? What followed was a methodical dissection of every flaw their expensive consultants had missed. Market concentration violations, antitrust issues, evidence of planned price manipulation, all the things my little business specialized in catching. But our market analysis, Hammond tried to interrupt, shows a post-merger control of 67% market share. I finished, as my daughter-in-law proudly announced at last night's dinner party. Andrea looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. By 10 a.m., the verdict was clear. The merger, as proposed, could not be approved. The room erupted in chaos as reporters rushed to file their stories. However, I continued once order was restored. The board is willing to consider an amended proposal, one that addresses these violations and ensures market competition. How long would that take? Hammond asked desperately. My firm usually needs 3 months to properly restructure such proposals, I said mildly. Though I'm sure your top-tier consultants can work faster. Andrea finally met my eyes, years of dismissive comments hanging between us. After the room cleared, she remained behind, staring at the stacks of annotated documents, hundreds of pages of detailed analysis from my hobby business. Why didn't you warn me? She whispered. Would you have listened? I gathered my papers. Or would you have dismissed it as more basic stuff from your mother-in-law's quaint little office? I've been so focused on appearances, I suggested, on impressing people with the right labels, the right connections, the right addresses. She nodded miserably. The merger can still happen, I told her, but it needs to be done right, not with shortcuts and social connections, but with proper analysis and compliance. Will you? She hesitated. Would your firm consider helping? I smiled. That's what small businesses are for, aren't they? Helping the big players avoid costly mistakes. Later that evening, I found Andrea in my home office, studying the diplomas and awards I'd never bothered to display prominently. Presidential Advisory Committee, she read. Congressional testimony, White House Task Force. All for my little consulting thing, I confirmed. She turned, tears in her designer mascara. I've been terrible to you. You've been unobservant, I corrected. Too busy looking for importance in all the wrong places. Can you teach me? She asked suddenly, not just about the merger, but about all of it, how to see what really matters. I considered her request. It would mean starting at the bottom, learning the basics, no shortcuts. I'm ready, she said, and for the first time, I believed her. 6 months later, the merger was approved under a completely restructured proposal. Andrea had spent those months working alongside my team, learning what real corporate expertise looked like. She traded her social lunch meetings for regulatory study sessions, her networking parties for actual networking. Congratulations, I told her after the final approval. You've learned the most important lesson in business. That appearances don't matter. That they matter far less than substance. She smiled, gesturing to my home office. I can't believe I once called this place a corporate playhouse. Well, I checked my phone, where the White House Chief of Staff was calling again. Sometimes the best plays happen on the smallest stages. The merger made headlines, but not for its size or glamour. Instead, it was praised as a model of regulatory compliance and fair market practice. Andrea's social media followers dropped as her professional reputation soared. Ready for your first solo consultation? I asked her one morning. She straightened her now modest suit. Are you sure I'm qualified? You've learned the most important qualification, I assured her. You've learned to look past the surface. Sometimes the biggest transformations come from the smallest revelations, and sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving someone wrong, but in teaching them how to be right. Come on, I told my daughter-in-law. We have some small-time consulting to do.